you can look to those, and those are coming up, and I will mention those a little bit later on too. So to begin with, again, New Year's orientation. And what we're going to address today is what is CTIS and how do I use it? So the idea is that you are fairly new to CTIS, and it's kind of an introductory level. All right. Okay, so CTIS, CTEIS, CTIS, however you want to pronounce it. It is an acronym, stands for the Career and Technical Education Information System. And it is just that. It is an information system. It is designed to collect, analyze, aggregate, and distribute information about career and technical education. And, you know, what we do at PTD Technology is we support the CTIS application and talking about how data goes into it, how do you manipulate the data, how you manage the data, how you get data back out of it. CTIS itself has really two main goals. I used to talk about how it has two masters. The first one is funding. We use CTE enrollment data along with other data to determine a variety of different funding streams distributions. Used to be just a 6181 added costs, but now there's 3 or 4 different funding streams that all depend on enrollment information and a variety of different information like that. We also use it to provide data for federal reporting to Perkins legislation. The Perkins legislation is the appropriation that, from the feds that funds and provides for funding for career and technical education in high schools. And so we want to keep them happy. So we have to provide them with a lot of data, and this is typically in the core performance indicator reports and some other reports. So we have two goals. One is to gather data for funding, and the other is to gather data for federal reporting. And sometimes you'll notice some of the oddities about CTIS and you say, well, why do we do it that way? And a lot of times it has to do with you're trying to serve one of these goals or the other, and very often they're not very complementary goals, and they make things difficult to try and get data both ways. We have a variety of secondary goals. The first is to be able to take all of the CTE data and link it back into the Michigan School Data Systems master data set, so that they have CTE data in, to include in their the whole statewide school data set, so that CTE is included. We also collect it and prepare it and return it back to districts so that they can use it as a tool to review their own programs and improve them and make sure that they're doing the best that they can there. All right, just looking. A quick question came in. Will we provided information on the slides? Yes, I will show you where to get this slideshow along with other information in a little bit. And part of the goal of this presentation is to show you where you can find all of this information. So I will get that out to you. All right. All right. So to begin with, there is a little bit, there's 2 different hierarchical structures that are really important to understanding how CTIS and Career and Tech Ed in Michigan work. The first one is what I like to think is the geographical or building-based hierarchy, and that is on your left. It starts off with, see if I can, does it allow me to do this? I thought I could highlight. I'll figure that out later. Does that allow me to do it? There we go. So the first one is the geographical, and that starts with, again, you have the entire state, but within the state you have your CPIDs, or your career education planning districts, and there's, I believe, 53 of them, and they are closely aligned with counties, but not always. But that is kind of the top hierarchy within the state. And then within a CPID, you have fiscal agencies. The fiscal agencies are responsible for the funding and some other tasks. The fiscal agents are responsible for making sure all the users are in the system. And within a fiscal agency, you have an operating agency, and these kind of align somewhat towards ISDs, but not always. And then within an operating agency, you have operating buildings. And an operating building is where the program and courses are actually taking place. And this is in contrast to a sending building. For instance, you may have a high school that has no CTE programs of their own, but they send all of their students to a local or to the county or the ISD's career center. So in that case, the career center would be the operating building, but the high school without any CTE programs would be the sending building. And for the most part, the majority of what we do within CTIS orients around the operating building, but there is some stuff we do that has to do with the sending building. As you can imagine, that the operating and sending building, there's a variety of different permutations that you could see there. For instance, you could have a high school that has their own CTE programs, in which case the high school would be both the operating building and the sending building. And you can have a high school that sends students to different operating buildings, and you can have an operating building that receives students from different sending buildings. So you can be aware of that. The next block of hierarchy you want to take a look at is on the right here, which is the programming hierarchy, and that refers to how the programming is organized all the way down to how it's delivered. It all starts out at the top lowest layer of the career cluster, and those are, I think there's I can't remember how many, there's 10 or so career clusters, and these are set up by U.S. Department of Ed. And within those career clusters, you have SIP codes, and the SIP codes are, SIP stands for the Classification Instructional Program. I left that out there. That should say program right there, code, or SIP codes. And you'll see that different programs have different SIP codes. For instance, a welding class will have a different SIP code than an automotive class that will have a different SIP code than a business class. And that's the way to keep track of the different types of programs being taught. So the next layer down is the program serial number, or the PSN, and that refers to a program being taught in a building, or a SIP code in a building. And so that's a way to, it's actually an implementation of a SIP code within a building. And so you can have, a high school 1 that has a welding program, and high school 2 also has a welding program, and they will have 2 different PSNs to keep them differentiated. And then within a program, you have different types. The major types you have are a regular type, which is kind of the old traditional type, where the students just attend it and progress through it. And then more recently you have the early middle college, which we will get into more later on, but those have to do with a specific type of program that is more coordinated with the colleges. Within a program, you actually create courses, and those courses are identified by course section codes. And you can have multiple course section codes within a program, or multiple courses. And within a course, you can have up to 4 subsections. And the reason is that they're not necessary, and we're slowly moving away from them. But what they allow you to do is have a situation where you'll have the same teacher in the same classroom at the same time teaching different groups of students different material. So you may have in the same class a subsection of first-year students and a subsection of second-year students, and this is a way to keep track of that. And then within those subsections, you actually identify what it is that is being taught. And this is reported through either segments or competencies. And I will get into segments and competencies a little bit later on, but segments is the old way of doing things that relied to the previous Perkins 4 legislation, which just recently turned over into Perkins 5, which now reports program content by competencies. As I said before, I will touch more on this later on. But you can see that there are these hierarchies, and a lot of the structures and a lot of the way that the data is managed and input and reported will be reported based on the program hierarchy and the building hierarchy. So you'll have roll-ups, excuse me, that could be a building-based, fiscal agency-based, CPID-based, or you could have roll-ups based on zip codes, based on program types, et cetera, et cetera. All right. So just to talk a little bit more about programs, just to kind of clear, as I mentioned before, a PSN is the actual implementation of a zip code in a building. And so you'll have, like in this case, you'll have the zip code 47.0604. Automotive technician in building A will have a PSN that is different than the same zip code in building B. And so that keeps these two separate and allows us to look at them collectively in terms of automotive programs, but it also allows us to separate them and view them based on their own buildings or in the building hierarchy. Just to kind of further take this down, you have the PSN, and within the PSN, you'll have multiple courses. In this case, the automotive, you might have example courses of intro, safety, brakes, engine repair. It's just a couple of examples. And then within each one of those courses, you could have up to 4 subsections. And then in those 4 sections, identify those little X's here or whatever, represent the different segments or competencies that are being provided in those subsections. And then you can see as you look at a student, as it progresses through, it takes different courses, it will collect competencies and subsections, which then you can use to kind of chart their progress through the course. So a lot of what we're doing here is we're collecting this data down here, which is the students in the subsections, so we can track individual progress and as groups. All right. Another hierarchy that you'll kind of see that's important to recognize is the hierarchy of roles, or how who reports to who. The overlying entity is the OCTE, or the Office of Career and Tech Ed, and they are the ones that are the ultimate authority and the ultimate role, and they manage everything. They determine who the CPIDs are. There is one specific individual that is the CPID administrator, and so there, with 53 CPIDs, there's 53 of them. Every CPID can have multiple fiscal agencies, and every fiscal agency, there's I think 2 often referred to as level 5 authorized individuals. And as I said, every CPID could have multiple fiscals, and every fiscal will have 2 individuals. And then within a fiscal, you will have building reporters, and the majority of everyone in the system are building reporters, and they are the ones tasked with entering the data into the system. And there's, for the most part, 3 types of data streams that we use to enter data in the system. One is enrollment, where you will be tasked with entering students, courses, and enrollments and other ancillary things to enrollment into the system. And then you also have people putting in dealing with expenditures. That's where after the funding has been processed, we look at how you spent the money to make sure that the money was spent right and you spent the right amount. Excuse me. Need a cough button. And then you have follow-up. And the follow-up is a process where we the districts will go in and contact students after they've finished their programs or left school, and find out what they're doing and trying to figure out, where they are with the system. So you may be tasked with one or all three of these. More often than not, most people don't get all three of them, but some people will. The majority of them will be enrollment, because that's the largest task. But you may have all three of these roles, or you may only have one of them. The CPID stands for, there's a question that came out, what does the CPID stand for? The CPID stands for Career Education Planning District, I believe. It's Career Education Performance or Planning. I always get those two confused up. But it's the top level of organization within Michigan. Yeah, Stephen let me know that it is planning. It's the Career Education Planning District. All right. All right. Within these roles, there are different levels of access. The level one is basically someone who can only look at reports. Doesn't have much utility in our system. There might be a few that do it. Level two is someone that can actually view school and student or course information. And that can be useful and is used sometimes. The majority of the users are level 3 and level 4. Level 3s are able to enter and edit data within CTIS, and typically you are assigned buildings, and within those buildings, then you can work on your your students and your enrollments and your courses. And so you are able to access, see, and edit those. But if you can only do it in the buildings that you've been assigned. So if you think you should be able to access multiple buildings, then you need to contact the fiscal agent level 5 authorized individual who is responsible for granting you access, and say, hey, I think I should have access to more. If you're a level 4, you have all that's in level 3, but you also can see economically disadvantaged students. That is a field that we hide unless you're a level 4. It's a protected field, so only those that have been granted specific access to seeing that can see that. Again, if you think you should see it and you need to see it and you can't, you need to talk to your fiscal agent level 5 to find that out. Then we have the level 5, which is the fiscal agent, and they have a variety of different tasks, one of which is creating and granting access to the operating buildings within their domain, if you will. So they're the ones who are assigning roles and responsibilities, and if you have issues with getting access to what you think you need to, then they're the first person you need to contact. Okay. So that's kind of some of the background level groupings and important structures that we want to take a look at. The next thing we want to take a look at is I guess you want to look at the calendar. And this is kind of all the things that happen during a year. As you can imagine, with CTIS supporting school-related functions and school being a yearly cyclic process, CTIS itself is a yearly cyclic process that has a one-year cycle that repeats every year. And actually, it's kind of a 2 or 3 year cycle, but the end of the first year feeds into the second, feeds into the third, kind of thing. But for the most part, the majority of what everybody will be dealing with has to do with just the first level of the yearly cycle. And you can see it up here. This kind of represents the year. And here we are in September, and we're starting the year. And the first thing we're going to look at is the fall entry. Then after that, we have expenditures, and then the follow-up is done towards the end of the year. And then the majority of the January through June is kind of finishing up your enrollments. We'll talk about that. And then all of this data goes into producing the federal reports and the funding reports, which then, again, as I said, the results of these reports, we send them off to the feds and everything, but their results also feed back into the next year, into the expenditures, into the fall entry, the follow-up, and everything. So it's a cyclical process. And you'll get used to seeing every one of these steps every year. And with that, we have kind of 4 major training events that kind of coincide with the 4 major data collections that we do. We have the fall data entry. I'll talk about that in a minute, but basically we're trying to get all the courses and teachers. That needs to be updated. That should be September. So that's September. We have expenditures, which are due in November. We have the follow-up, which is now due in January. And then we have the final enrollments, which is due in late June. And then a few sub things within enrollments. And these timelines are very important because the majority of every one of our collections requires that the entire state be completed before the next step can be done. So when we're looking at expenditures or something like that, every building in the state has to be completed before we can complete the reports and submit the final reports we need to do. So it's really important that everybody adhere to these timelines and get everything done on time, because if you don't, it holds up the entire state. All right. So looking at the fall, the first task we have is the fall data entry. And as I said before, enrollment is kind of the core of almost everything that we do. And in the fall, what OCTE is looking for is they need to know a list of all the courses and the primary teachers that will be teaching them for that year. And this is important for them. It allows them to do a better job in planning and allocating resources and doing all the things that they need to do. So it's done pretty early in the year, and it's I know it's kind of abrupt to come right back and have to get all this stuff done. It's expected to be done by September 23rd. The one thing to keep in mind that it's only the list of courses and only the primary teacher. It doesn't require that you have all the competencies or the segments. It doesn't require that they don't have to be accurate, that you don't have to have enrollments. Just the course and the teacher needs to be in there. So, a lot of people are concerned that they don't know what their enrollments are, or a lot of people are concerned that they really haven't figured out what their segment profile or the competency profile looks like, and that's okay. It's not required for this, just the course itself. And you can go in and clean that up a little bit later on. There was a question about all the courses in each program with each teacher in the program. I'm pretty sure it's all the courses, but I'm going to have to follow up on that. I will make sure that Stephen asked the question about whether you have to have one course per program or every course. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I'm going to have to follow up on that. And the question is not open to add yet. Yes, the CTIS is open. You can be putting in your courses right now. It's open. The only thing that we don't have, and I'll touch on this a little later, is the imports. Is we're finishing that up, but you should be able to enter in your courses as we speak. I'm just writing a note down here real quick, just to make sure I get the question answered. All right, so so after later on in September, that finishes up in November, you have the expenditures. And again, the expenditures may be a different group that do enrollments. It still needs to be done. And what we do in expenditures is we ask that you enter in all the expenditures that you acquired to run your programs per program. And this is done to make sure that the money is being spent correctly and that all of it's being spent in the right places. And it's also very important because we use that expenditure information to identify what program costs are, or how much does a typical program cost to run. And that in turn feeds back into the funding program. The idea being that programs that are more expensive to run should that should influence how they are funded. So it's really important that you put in all your expenditures so that that program cost number is correct, so that you are funded correctly. A lot of times people just put in the minimal amount, um, um, find the minimal amount required to get past the putting in their expenditures. So again, we have another course that goes over expenditures, and that will be coming up shortly. And again, it's important that your information be incorrect, because if your information is not incorrect, there is an auditing process, and if you don't put the right amount in the right places, you could be subject to recapture of funds. So it's very important that you put this in accurate and timely. Yeah, I see some comments going on the side around. It's just the courses. It's not courses in enrollments. And even competencies, we touch on a little bit that the competencies all you have to put in is, like I say, you just have to put in, the first slot for competencies, the first slot for segments, and we will address that later on. But you just need a course. And as far as imports go, we're hoping that we're into final testing today, and we're hoping that we should be able to import both Perkins 4 and Perkins 5 courses by the end of the week. That's our goal. All right, so the questions is as far as some other questions about expenditures. The expenditures is going to be pretty similar to what it's been in the past. There's going to be a new component to it that deals with 61B, but that is really not going to change how expenditures are done. And more information about that will come out later for those that are interested in that. All right, follow-up. Later on, towards the middle or December-ish, October, December-ish, we will start with the follow-up. As I said before, the follow-up is a time where we determine all of the students that have left school, and we're concentrators, and I'll talk about concentrators in a minute. The districts will then try and contact them, and then we have a survey that asks them questions about what they've done in since they've left school, and whether they've used any of the skills, whether they have jobs in the programs or what have you. And that information is used to try and see how well the programs are doing, and see where they're, what the outcomes are. So that's done. That's kind of done. That's about a 3-month program, or a 3-month process that starts in November through January. It's finished in January. As I said, we survey the wage earning completers who left school in the previous year. It's not even so much in the previous year. And this is important for developing the follow-up reports. It's also important for the federal reporting. So it's something that we need to do. Then starting at the beginning of the year, although you can kind of say that it's enrollments are ongoing all year long. You could be working on your enrollments. You could get all your courses in now, and then just update your enrollments later on. So it's kind of an ongoing process. But there is a kind of a sub deadline that happens in May 14th. And in May 14th, you will need to have all of your CTE students entered into the CTIS application. And This is important. So we need to do a lot of our funding reports and do all of our CPI reports. We have to get data from other state school systems, including MME/SAT for academic achievement. We also need to get data from the GAD file for one of the GAD is the graduate and dropout file. It allows us to get information about students and where they are in the cohort and when they've left school and all that other all those things that are important for federal reporting. And getting these data systems and getting the right data takes a long time. So we need to get started way early on in the process. And so we need a list of all the students that are in CTE early on. We don't need to know what they're enrolled in. We don't need to know the programs they're in. We don't need to know what their grades are. We don't need to know any of that stuff. We just need to know that they are CTE students for that year. So that's an important deadline on the 14th. And then we kind of wrap it all up. In late June, we have the fall and or the spring enrollment completion report or collection, in which we finalize all of the students' courses enrollments. And we get that in, we verify it, we collect it, we use that. We also collect credentials and work-based learning, and these are part of the enrollment collection, and we'll go into more details on those in the individual courses, but those are part of that collection. And as I said, all of this data goes into producing the federal reports and the funding reports. And again, they need to be in on time and correct. And then, of course, once we have all this data, it goes into producing the funding and federal reports. And that's as I said in the beginning, the purpose of all of this data collection is to produce these reports, to generate the funding and to generate the federal reports. So let's see here. I will take a quick check to see if any questions. Yes, the follow-up is based on concentrators, not completers. If that was incorrect in the slide, that will get fixed. So, and I don't think it doesn't look like there's any other questions at the moment. So we will go ahead and as I mentioned, there's a lot of different due dates, a lot of different events, and the due dates slightly change every year. And I think this is a good slide to kind of look into all the different resources that are available to you. And you can start thinking about it just in due dates. The first one is the CTIS site itself, CTIS.com. And then an offshoot of that is support.ctis, and we'll take a look at that and everything that's available there. And there's also, within the, as I'll show you that there's a lot of manuals that you have available to you, and that you can, there's a lot of information that is available on those. So let me see. As I bang around within Click Meeting to make sure I'm pushing the right buttons. All right, let's see if I can do that. Do that. All right. Hopefully you should see the training site. And as you go into the training, when we actually do the training, you will be able to use the training site to simulate your data entry. And again, when we get more involved in some of those types of trainings, you'll see that. You can always tell the training site because it's got the little coral background on it on the opening page. It can be found at train.ctis.com. And again, you'll have more of that information on how to use that when you attend the other trainings. But this is similar. I mean, you would see something similar if I went to just CTIS.com. It's a similar site. And the main thing to see when you have here on the right-hand side, you have a list of all the due dates. And you can see that you have the fall course collection date, which is I referred to that is just the list of courses and staff, not students, not competencies, not segments, any of that stuff, just the courses and the staff. And even if if you find yourself in January adding a class that you had no idea that you are going to run in September, that's okay. The goal is to get the best possible snapshot for what your year is going to look like now. And OCT recognizes that there might be some changes, and you might drop a class or you might add a class, and that's okay. You just need to do the best you can to produce the picture of what your year looks like it's going to be. You have your expenditure due dates, and you'll notice here that each one of these due dates has two different due dates. You have due to the CPID and due to the OCTE. As you will learn when we go through the different trainings, there's actually a procedural step to submit your reports. The first step is as the building reporter, you will submit the building to your fiscal agency. The fiscal agency will review it, and if everything looks good, they will submit that to their CPID. So it needs to go from the building to the fiscal to the CPID by September 23rd. And then then the CPID has a week to resolve any issues that may have occurred, and then they have till September 30th to complete the report. But everything has to be done by September 30th. Expenditures the same way. It's due to the CPID on the 4th, but due to OCTE on the 11th. And typically, as a building reporter, that means that you probably need to try and do it a little bit before the 4th and make sure that it's going through the proper channels and that there's some time to try and fix it. Follow-up is due in early January. There's, these are 3 different collections that are basically the same collection, but, we kind of group them together. One is the end of year completion, which is the end of year, all the enrollment data has to be done, along with all your work-based learning and credentials have to be put in by this due date. The EMC and dual enrollment, that's kind of a hold off from previous years. In previous years, we had different due dates if you had EMC programs because they required extra time to produce the data necessary to do 61B, which is the EMC and dual enrollment funding stream. But that has been updated this year so that that you don't have to do anything special for EMC or dual enrollment. That data will be collected and extracted during the spring enrollment completion. As far as credentials, you have to have all your preliminary credentials in when this report is in. However, you can update that through the summer. And as far as credentials go, again, more time will be spent on that during the enrollment trainings. All right, a few questions came in. Let's see. One question is the XO 107. XO 107 is a funding report, and that's the primary report that comes out after we complete all the funding. Last year, due to COVID, they had it kind of threw everything off, as you can imagine, and we didn't have an official XO 107 report. This year, we've we're back to where we should be, and there will be an XO 107 funding report. EMC, if you recall, is early middle college. If I go, let's see if I can go back to here. Hopefully everybody can see the PowerPoint again. And if I go back to here, in your programming types, within a program, you have a regular, which is just a program within a school, or it can be an EMC, which means it's tied to an early middle college program. And they have special rules and regulations, and they have special funding streams. So if you're doing EMC, you will know. If you're not, then you don't need to worry about it. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully we're back to the CTIS screen again. So this is this is the list of due dates. There's a couple of for administrators, there's some additional dates and information down on here. There's, again, if you're doing new programs, that's that window. We're trying to find out what the dates are. They haven't been set for this year. If you're doing CPIT options, they're doing June 9. The count days represent, the days that all the students are supposed to be counted. We use count days for spring and for first semester and second semester. So the student needs to be enrolled on that day to be counted as a first semester course or a second semester course. Again, we mentioned the May 15th date, which all students need to be in. So that's in there. And then once we get going, this will tell you when the last time we did an MSDS match. MSDS is the Michigan Student Data System. And we will take students that are enrolled in CTIS, and we will use that to compare against MSDS, and it will pull out student demographics like race, exit status, school grade, and a lot of that information will get pulled out in that. You must have a current MSDS record for every student before you can do the final completion, and this just lets you know if you entered in a student and you're not seeing their race or gender yet, you can always check back to see the match dates to see if it's been matched yet. Last year, as everybody knows, was a crazy year. With the pandemic, that caused all sorts of weird changes to the way things done. We as the developer and supporter of CTEIS went through a contractual change that we had to just start doing things a lot differently. And so we had to migrate a lot of the data systems around. And so that caused some issues. And we had a major change in programming in going from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. So a lot of things that were in place got kind of prioritized into lower priority. One of them was, getting this match date publishing correctly. But everything's getting back on track now, or we're getting close, and we should have this back on track shortly where this comes up. But there's been a few things that have been issues that we're getting to the point where we're getting them all fixed up again, but we're due to the combination of the pandemic, the contractual changes, and the change from Perkins 4 to Perkins 5. So it's basically a perfect storm. But hopefully it's behind us and we can start cleaning up again. Some other things on the main page that you'll see is typically anytime we put out any kind of an update, you will see a list of all the changes. We put out an update last week that basically says that course of enrollments are now open, and some information about that. We did mention that course imports aren't ready yet, but we hope to have them done shortly, and then remind that the dates are the fall course review is required here. Another link that we have here is we'll get this updated with all the upcoming courses that are available, but you can always just click on this link here, and this link will take you to our first foray into what we call the CTIS knowledge base, which is at support.ctis.com. but this lists all of the, this will list all of the training events and all the training dates. We are currently in the new user training. We will do another one in October. We're kind of, a lot of things happening in the fall, so we're trying to cram a lot of dates together in there, but we have the fall training dates at the end of this week and the beginning of next week. We begin at the end of the month, we'll do expenditure trainings, and then we'll do a couple of the follow-up survey trainings in October, November. And then in the spring, we have a variety of different types of trainings to help make sure you're staying on track and you're doing what you need to do to optimize your reports, to optimize your funding opportunities. And to register for any one of these, you can go over and click on these. And the fact that you're here in the class means you've probably gotten this part figured out. So, but that is, you can always get there from here and find that out. Down here at the very bottom of the page, you have some quick links to the knowledge base. And you can go here like through to enrollment, and it'll take you to the enrollment page. But basically, you can just, if you want to, you can just go to support.ctis.com and you can see the homepage. And on the homepage, it's got some notes on here, like we have, any information updates you have on here. You have the quick links down here. You have some training that are coming up. You have all the important dates listed down here too. So those are all available in there too. But if you were looking for a specific thing, you can come up here to the list up here, and then you can look at the different resources, or you can use the quick links. If I wanted to go to enrollment, one of the things that you can do is you can see how it's kind of broken up for enrollments. You have the fall data entry and then the spring collection, which is basically the fall and the spring. You can see the new user set of documentation. So there is a training guide that comes along with this. So if you're, the majority of what we're talking about is in this training guide. This PowerPoint will also be in there. I got a few things to update in it, but once we are finished with this this presentation, I will update the PowerPoint and get that updated in there. You also find videos. And so you'll see that we have, in most of our courses, we have videos that are supported with them. And so they're basically YouTube videos. You can go in and you can run them. And so if you need a kind of a refresher, you can look through these. If you need or if you have a coworker that wasn't able to attend a training, you can point them to these videos. Again, you'll have also, you've got, this is the fall data entry. So you've got, some information about building course review, which is, entering in your data and how do you submit it for the fall course review. If you need to look at that, that's in there. Let's get back to here. You've got instructions for the fiscal agent, instructions for the CPID. You've got your fall data entry PowerPoint entry guide. This has been updated for Perkins 4 and Perkins 5. And then, we do 3 sets of kind of classes in the spring. We have one that optimizes spring enrollment to make sure that in the spring, you're on track of all your reporting. And then we have some final courses in the spring to finalize your spring enrollment collection. A few other things in here: facts, error guides, other things. Some other useful information that you have over here is, as I mentioned before, you have Perkins 4 and Perkins 5 courses. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 SIP codes that are Perkins 5 this year. That number will increase every year, but there's 5 of them. There's cosmetology, health sciences, education, business, automotive, electrical, and construction. The rest some 42 zip codes are all still Perkins 4, and they're going to be using the old way of doing things, which is to use segments. And you can use this instructional design form to see what that looks like. And the idea here is that, you know, you can set up, you can look at your school, the PSN, the program, the zip code. And if you're doing semesters, you can kind of set up and say, all right, in semester 1, I'm going to have this course or this class, and it's going to do segments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the second semester is going to do 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you can use these instructional designs to help you figure out what your school year is going to look like. You know, the whole idea that segments, when it comes to Perkins 4, segments, I think, represented standards. And so, you know, there's a handful of standards that were identified for a particular zip code that are represented by segment 1. And if you're teaching those, then you would say, all right, course 1 had these segments in it. And for Perkins 4, there's only 12 segments. And no matter how many standards a zip code has, they were all broken up into 12 segments. This one kind of looks like if you're doing trimesters, and this one would be like a 2-year program, and some more information. So these are some tools that might be helpful to setting up an instructional design for a Perkins 4 course that uses segments. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the instructional designs should be done by the teachers or the CTE administrators. They are, you know, if you find yourself as a data entry person being asked to put these together, then, you know, that's really, you should probably ask about that, because it's not the job of the building reporter to design the courses. It's the job of the teacher and the CTE administrator. So keep that in mind. It looks like that someone's mentioning that there is a link to a more updated instructional design for segments. So I will make sure that we get that one updated too. So this one kind of is an example of how grades in segments work. You can kind of take a look at this. When a student is in a course that that had segments 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in it, and they get a 3.0 in those and in that course, then at the end of the year, they will get a 3.0 for all those segments. And if in a different course, he got a 2.5, then you can see how the profile is then collapsed onto an aggregate profile for that program. So this is a nice little sheet you can look at to see how the grades work. And we'll always take the highest grade if you have courses where they're overlapping. You're like, in this case here, this course and this course both address segments 8 and 10. We would take the highest grade, and so you would get a 3 for 8 and 10 there. So that's a little example of how grades and segments work. And this applies to competencies too, when we talk about competencies here in a minute. The PIC Users Guide, PICS, PIC stands for Personnel ID Code, I believe, or something along those lines. But it basically is it's the number for staff, and this is a little guide for putting how to manage your staff that came from CEPI. And this is important because this year we're being asked to do a much better job in making sure our PICs are accurate and we have accurate staff. So the checks for making sure that you have a valid staff member are going to be much more rigorous this year. Again, you won't see most of this, but you may find yourself having to go in and update staff that you might have had for a while that we've discovered that their PICs aren't current or something else isn't current about them. But you can look in here for managing staff there. There's a couple of small guides for students. you have an error resolution guide. We try and put out lots of resolution guides. A lot of times when you deal with a system, it'll throw an error at you, and while the errors try to be as helpful as possible, sometimes they're not terribly helpful. So we try and put error resolution guides available for you. One of the issues, the UIC, is the Universal ID code, which represents the students. It's the student's ID code. And when you submit a student, if their UIC isn't right, it'll kick the student out and throw an error at you. And there's a variety of different ways to resolve that. We have some special collections. We have credentials. And you'll be expected to report any credentials students learned. This is a Excel spreadsheet that lists all of the credentials that are available, so you can make sure that you're using these credentials and that it's organized by zip code. So you can look into here to see which credentials have been approved, any supplemental ones and that are available, and this will be updated. We're scheduled to update that this week too, so we're going to get another update 9/15. So you can look forward to that for the coming year. You'll also be exported to report on work-based learning, and you can get some information here on how to do that, how to track it, and some videos on how to do that. And then we have Perkins 5 courses, which are going to be using competencies. And you can use these links here to kind of give you an idea of how all that's going to work. So if I was to click on health sciences, all right, so you've got a program overview. And what this does will show you that in this program, there are, let's see, 21, 22 competencies, and they're coded A1 through, A1 through 10, or for this particular zip code. Every zip code will be coded differently, and it identifies what the competencies are and all the different things that they represent. And so you can kind of look at this and then, again, hopefully the teachers are going through and creating an instructional design where you can say, all right, in year 1, these particular competencies are being taught in this particular class. And then in the second semester, these competencies, and the third semester, these competencies. And so this is a way that, this is different than segments. I mean, it's similar in concept that, your course content is either broken up into 12 segments or a variety of competencies, and then you identify what's being taught in a class by listing those segments or those competencies in an instructional design and in this class. And again, this is something that the teachers, the career, or the CTE administrators should be doing. But it helps to understand this as you're going to be trying to enter this stuff in, and you're going to be the first layer of defense to make sure that it's entered in correct. So that's the design zone. So this is how competencies work, and a little bit different than segments. See if I can, let's go back to here. Oh, go back to here. And you'll notice that if I do cosmetology is an interesting one because it represents the extreme in that it has, if I go back to, if you look at all, it has competencies that go up to H5. It has actually 35, 34, 33 different competencies. And so what did we say? That what was the education had 22 segments, have 12 cosmetology has 35. So it's a little bit different in that there's going to be, every zip code is going to have its own number of competencies. And so you're going to have to, you're not just looking at 12 anymore, you're looking at a variety. And then it will have its instructional design example in here too about how to create that. Something else that might be useful as we are transitioning to Perkins 4 into Perkins 5, those that are in 2-year programs that were in a Perkins 4 zip code last year that is now a Perkins 5 zip code this year, we provided a segment competency crosstab quick reference. And basically, as it comes up here in a second, this is just a quick reference for all the different zip codes that, so this is business, or no, I'm sorry, this is health cluster. It shows that segment 1 last year, if they took segment 1 last year, then you're going to get competency 1 and 2 this year. And so that way you can kind of look at what segments they received last year to see how many competencies they have this year. And as we will demonstrate when we get into the training for this, you will see that we have a report that can show you this, and you can look at individual students and see how many based on how many segments they had last year, how many competencies they have this year. The one thing that I will, the one thing I unfortunately don't have a good slide for, but I think it's worth talking about is one other kind of important structure to talk about is progress through a program. A lot of things depend on progress through a program. Funding depends on it. The core performance indicators depend on it. We had talked earlier. Let's see, what was I going to say there? We talked. Yeah, I think a comment came up about follow-up is based on concentrators and not completers. In previous years, when we were doing segments, there was a rule that said that if you had acquired, I think it was 7 segments, then you became a concentrator. And if you got to 12 segments, you were a completer. And the idea being the number of segments that, how many segments you acquired determined your progress through a program. And with that information, concentrators versus completers versus participants were funded differently and then are reported differently on core performance indicators. And that's still the case for Perkins 4. Those rules are still being followed. And so it's the number of segments that you have that determine what your progress is through the program. For competencies, it's done a little bit different, and it's the acquisition of PCCs or Perkins course competencies. So in order to be a participant, you have to have completed 1 Perkins course competency, shown here in, this is, what are we in here? This is health sciences. It's shown here as an A or a B or a C. So if you completed all of the C competencies or all of the B competencies or all of the A competencies, you're awarded 1 PCC or Perkins course competencies. And that would identify you as a participant. If you've achieved 2 PCs at Perkins course competencies, that would identify you as a concentrator. And if to become a completer, you must have completed all of the PCCs. And so that's how they're measuring progress in Perkins 5, is to make sure that, how many PCCs that you've acquired. And that's why it's important when we talk about in the spring, we have our courses that deal with optimizing spring enrollment. And the whole idea about optimizing is to make sure that your students are optimized for getting all of the segments or all of the competencies and thus PCCs that they deserve. And a lot of that has to make sure that your instructional design is right, that you are, you make sure you're reporting all of the competencies or segments in the courses right, and all of that. So it's really important that you take advantage of these tools to make sure that you've optimized your enrollment so that you're accurately and optimally reporting student you're reporting student enrollment. So that's take advantage of these tools. I think a quick note, someone asked about meeting. I think what we're going to do is normally we like to have, our videos are published, specifically with this information in them. But with all the things going on, we're probably going to take a recording of this video and post it so you can come back and re-listen to this video as a recording. And that will be posted right here in the new user set and new user orientation training videos. And we'll put the recording date up there. And so we'll make sure that this get up the next day or two. All right. So this is all enrollment information. You can see that we've got similar information for expenditures. We have the expenditures guides, PowerPoints, training videos, information for fiscals and CPIDs. We have, this is also where if you're going to do imports, you will find import guides. If we go back to enrollment real quick, we have where'd it go? If it's not up here, I think maybe it got moved. Could have sworn it's up here. The billing. Oh, I apologize. I will make sure that it's up here today, but it is basically the template for let me see something here real quick. Maybe I can find it real quick. Yeah, so this is what we put out for importing courses for Perkins 5. This gives you an example of importing a Perkins 4 course and how you do it by segments. And this would be a Perkins 5 course on how you do it by competencies, and there's the variety of different ways you can do it. This shows how you can do a Perkins 4 course and a Perkins 5 course listing both competencies and segments. And this is the actual template you would use. It lists the course section code, PSN, all the required information, including slots to put your segments and or your competencies in it. And it comes with some instructions on it on how to fill this all out. So for the majority of the imports that we have, we will have oh, it's in the import section. Thank you. Someone noted that the template is down here in imports. So, and in the import section, we have importing guides for all of the imports that you can do. And this document is right here that I just mentioned here. But you'll also have, and this is for importing enrollments. But if we go to expenditures, you'll have the ability to import expenditures here. So you can look there, but there's a lot of information here, a lot of guides that you can use. We have Followup has all of the documentation, the report interpretation guides, general resources, all the information that you would need for Followup. And if you're an administrator, you've got some, if you're a fiscal agent, or a CPIT admin. There's documentation here for things that you need to do as a CPIT or a fiscal. As I said before, you've got access to training videos and training documentation. All that's there. We also have user group meetings that these are specifically for the CPIT administrator user groups. That's to try and keep the numbers down. But we took a break through the summer, but we do this typically every quarterly or before, and we post what the user, the notes from the user group. So you can kind of, if you're curious to know what's going on, you can see that there. You got FAQs. We have a newsletter that we try and get out 3 times a year. We also have a comment that was made earlier about reports. We have a variety of different reports. A lot of the reports you'll find within CTIS. Some of them are out. We used to have a page called CTIS Reports, but due to some of the contractual stuff, that is now reports.ctis.com. And that is one of those things that during the transition didn't, see here, reports.ctis. That kind of didn't transition as well as it could have. It's in the process of being updated. We don't have very many reports on there, but we're starting to clean up the reports, transition them to Perkins 5 reports, and we're getting those up, and we're going to keep working on that. But we used to have 30 different reports on here, and we now probably have 7 or 8, but we're updating those, and those are going to be updated. Once we get past through September, that is one of the number 1 priorities, is to get CTIS reports back up and running to where it was. But you'll find, and these are basically public reports. So you will find information about the follow-ups. You'll find information about state aid. You'll find information about programs. But since they're public, all student information either be redacted or removed, or it'll be aggregated up to levels that hide student information. Another thing you can look at, another report that's available, is the analytics.com site. These are our dashboards. And we have a lot of our federal reporting on here. We have Perkins 5 performance and gender reports. And so you can pull these up, and these list dashboards about all the CPI data, and you can kind of go through here and look at different different way to look at the data, a variety of different ways to look at it. So, this is kind of one of the goals, where we take all the data we receive and we kind of package it and make it easy to go back and look in here. And you can see, you can look at by indicators, you can look at by school year, by regions, CPIDs, all the different ways to slice and dice this data. And right now we have race and gender, we have special pops, we also have enrollment reports, and that's also another one of our goals for the conference, is we're going to add some more reports on here. There's a variety of different things, some ideas that we have to put more dashboards up. So these are available to you, and these are found at analytics.ctis.com. So that's another option that you have. So, so that's a lot of the resources that are available to you. I think I covered more of the majority of the resources. Did I just? Are you still with me, or did I didn't end the show? Did I? Okay, you're still here. Sorry. I thought I ended the program. I thought that was way too easy. Yeah, okay. So just a few more slides that basically go into the process of collecting your data. And again, if can't emphasize enough, the quality of the data is important, both for getting an accurate picture, of what the state's doing and how the state's doing with CTE, but also, what we report to the feds, because a lot of our funding depends on it. But it's also important to make sure that your data is right, because a lot of your funding depends on it. And a lot of, and the success of the programs depend on making sure that we get accurate data. So we just like to emphasize that, there's a couple of different processes. You're going to want to collect the data and verify the data. And these are things you want to do before you even start inputting the data. And once you get the data and make sure it's good, then you input it, and then you use the tools to make sure that the data is correct and right. So when you collect it, again, everything's a little bit different. You're going to have different responsibilities. Maybe you're an enrollment reporter, maybe you're a expenditure reporter. Those are going to be a little bit different. There's different ways to access that information. But a lot of times you're going to be looking to your teachers. It's all going to change, again, as said, by your roles. Verify the data, give it a smell test, as I like to call it. Do things like, we'll see courses that have no students in them. And you're just like, okay, well, that should have been easy to notice that there's no students or one student in them, and verify, is that the right number of students? And we have ways to look at the number of, where our students are progressing, and, say, is that the right number of students? So check the data out, make sure it's valid, make sure you got the dates right, make sure you got the years right. A lot of people will wind up putting students in the wrong classes, and we can fix that, but it's kind of a pain to do it. So make sure you've got the right students in the right courses. Make sure you ask a lot of questions. Just everything you do to make sure the data is accurate. And then when you input the data, make sure you follow a lot of the prompts. We do provide or try to make it as easy as possible, and we try to provide as much guidance, but sometimes it's, the student or the CTIS can't tell you whether this student belongs in this course or not. It can tell you whether its dates are right or not, but it can't tell you whether it belongs in there or not. So do pay attention to the prompts that you'll receive from the application, but also, make sure you're doing everything you can do to make sure the data is accurate. Let's see what else we got here. And then use all the tools. And we go over these in the individual reportings, but we have a lot of reports designed to help you make sure that your data is in correctly, in ways to try and, again, we can't tell you if the data is wrong, but we can kind of, we try and find ways to bring questionable data to the surface. So take advantage of those things. Just a couple more things. Let's see here. We talked about technical assistance. Again, look to the CTIS homepage. A lot of links, direct links in there. Go to the knowledge base. If you're looking through all this stuff and none of that works, you can always use our help desk. For those of you who've been around for a while, you know that John Hazen is on the help desk, and he is an amazing resource for how to solve problems. So feel free to take advantage of him. You can get him either at ctis.help@ptdtechnology.com, or you can call him locally, or there's a local number and a 1-800 number. Please take advantage of that. When it comes to actually getting on the system, let's see if I go back to here. All right, so to log in to CTIS, the login link is in the upper right corner, and right now we use MEIS, or MEIS, the Michigan Education Information System login tool to do that. And that is going to change. We thought it would be changed by now, but apparently there's kind of a backlog for getting the logins changed. But probably, the goal right now is right after Christmas, we're going to do the transition. After Followup is in, it's kind of a quiet time. So we're going to try and look to that time to transition from MEIS to my login. And when we do that and how that happens, we will be continually providing more information. But for now, to log in, you will need a MEIS account, and you also need your FA Fiscal Agent Level 5 to put you into the system. So you click on this link here, and you can type password, and then, oops, I put in the password wrong. And it pops you up into CTIS, and then you'll have a menu right up here. If you're a data entry person, you will see just the data entry role along with the reports role. In this case, this particular user I have is only assigned to enrollments and follow-up, not to expenditures. So he doesn't have any expenditures in here. So again, this is where you can see whether you have the correct roles. This user is an administrator, so he has fiscal agency tasks. And so he's got those available to him. If you're not a fiscal agent or a CPID, you won't have this link here. But everybody will have the reports, and these are the different building reports that are available to you. So let me see here. Oh, I'm sorry. Like I said, I'll get better at this. All right, let's go back to not there. We go to screen sharing. All right. So yeah, so if you let me go through this again. You log in, it's in the upper right corner. And you can do CTEIS, LCT, and you can do that logs in. And as I said before, your data entry lists, if you're in the enrollment building reporter, you get this. If you're follow-up, you'll get this. This particular user is not an expenditures user, so I don't have the expenditure list. I am a fiscal agent, so I get all sorts of fiscal agency monitoring tools. But if you're not, you won't see this. But you will see, everybody gets to see the building reports, and there are a variety of different building reports that you can look at. And we go over these more in detail in that training. But you'll see those, and this is where you get, you'd get into the students, manage courses, enrollments, work-based learning, all the above. A couple of things that are useful. A lot of times people will say, I don't know who my CPID administrator is, or I don't know who my fiscal agent is, or I don't know this or that or the other. What you can do is you can come over to your username here and click on it, and it will list. So in this case, I am, these are all the buildings that have been associated to me. And because of these buildings, I report to these fiscal agency administrators, and this is who my CPID administrator is. So this is a way to find out who that I need to, if I'm trying to submit something to a fiscal agent and they're not, responding, then I can call them up and ask them or email them or whatever. So this is a tool that kind of tells you what you have access to you and who you report to. So that's something to look forward to that you can look into. Hopefully everybody can see that now. So I see a question about the data entry link on the website. I mean, there's a lot of different data entry sites. So depending on what type of data entry you're doing, you'll be going to different parts of this program. And as I said, on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, we're going to be going over these in detail, or you can kind of get an idea. You can look to the videos or you can look to the manuals. So I guess that kind of, let's see if I'm going to go back over here. put in the, so these are all the links. These are all the phone numbers, all the technical assistance. One thing I will tell you, that the technical assistance that we are able to provide you has to do with how to use CTIS and how to put data into CTIS. If you have questions that have to do with a procedure or programming or the like, in other words, how do I create my instructional design, or how, or anything along those lines, or what does this competency represent, or I don't think that should be that way. Those are questions that need to be directed towards OCTE directly. And in the manuals themselves, you will see, we'll show that in each one of the courses about who in OCTE you need to contact. But if you're asking us questions about instructional design and the like, we can't answer them. We're not allowed to talk about policy, or we're not qualified, and you don't want to hear it from us. You want to make sure you talk to OCTE about policy. But we'll certainly be able to point you in the right direction and make sure you talk to the right person. And we can also make sure we help you if you're trying to figure out how to get your data in right, correct, and fix problems or deal with those kinds of things. So, so at that point, this gives you some. That's right. This slide gives you the policy assistance for enrollments and expenditures. Joan Church is a good person to talk to. If you're doing follow-up, then you want to talk to Instructional, and those are their contact information. We do put out a listserv. Every time we make any updates or changes or anything we want to do, there is a listserv that we put out. And you can ask to be put on that listserv by contacting Jackie Martinez at this number, this email address. And then there's also a lot of policy information and a lot of updates and a lot of announcements that come directly from OCTE, which you'll find on the michigan.gov/OCTE website. So, hopefully everybody can see that. And then I think that kind of wraps it up. So at this point, before I'll throw it up for any other questions, but when you close this, you'll be asked to do a survey on what you thought of the training. And so please take a minute to do that. And so at this point, thank you. And let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else you'd like to talk about. See some people furiously typing, or at least one person. And as far as, if you need any help, don't hesitate to call the help desk. The help desk is manned, 8 to 5. So that shouldn't be a problem. And we pretty much will get back to you within 24 hours. We'll get for sure to get back to you. All right. Yes. And like I said, we have the enrollment training on Thursday, Friday, and Monday. I'm pretty sure the Thursday class is filled. Friday and Monday might have some room. So please, if you're not enrolled and you want to be, get enrolled in those. If those times don't work out to you, we're looking into adding another, but if we can't, be sure to look into the resources on Knowledge Base to find, recorded videos and the like. All right. Well, I think that will do it. I'll sit on a little bit longer to see if anybody has any last thoughts, but other than that, I think we're done. thank you for taking the time, and thank you for attending, and here's to a good year.